Hello. So today I'm going to be talking about setting bigger goals for yourself and constantly setting goals. And this is something that I think I'm going to tell a lot of personal stories today. Some of them may be even too personal, but I'm going to tell them anyway. And we're talking about the idea behind what this presentation is about is no matter who you are, no matter where you went to law school or what stage you are in your career, you're going to constantly come up against people that are trying to push you down, things that happen to you that are going to hurt you, and you're going to feel to some extent like you're not able to go forward and you may settle. This is one of the biggest things that happens to people and something that I've noticed. And having worked with thousands of attorneys, I think that this is one of the most important presentations you could hear, to the extent it can give you hope and the things that can help you achieve a lot more. So when I was in law school, I met a girlfriend first or second semester, and she wanted to come home. She wanted to come to Michigan, where I was from. My mom was single, my sister, and she wanted to stay with us for a few weeks and also work in my asphalt business, which is just crazy. But the visit went fairly well in the beginning, but it ended up not working out well at all. And there was tension between my mother and my girlfriend, which I didn't really understand. Even before the visit, my mom lived in not a very nice neighborhood. Well, it was a nice neighborhood, but a small house, and she didn't keep it up very well. So I spent lots of time doing yard work and cleaning the carpets. I put in new shower curtains and got everything organized, and I really wanted to make a good impression because it was someone I was very serious about at the time, and someone I actually ended up marrying later. And that was what happened. But about a week into the visit, we went to meet my father's mother for lunch on a Sunday afternoon, and everything seemed normal. By the time we returned in the afternoon, it was very strange. My mother had locked herself into her bedroom, and a friend of hers who was a sponsor that I didn't know very well from Alcoholics Anonymous came down and was waiting for us in the living room wearing a tennis skirt. I guess she'd been called over from wherever she was playing tennis, and told us that we had to leave. It just came completely out of nowhere. It was very upsetting for me personally because obviously my girlfriend was upset and my mom was upset. I had no idea what was going on. Everyone started crying and fighting. We needed to pack very rapidly, and it just wasn't a pleasant experience at all. It was just when you go through something like that, it can be very devastating. And then as we were finally getting out of there, the police had shown up because her sponsor, was just very dramatic and called the police for some reason. My mother came out of her room. There was a huge shouting match between she and my girlfriend. They were screaming that never going to marry me and all this sort of thing. Police cars in front of the house. It was just very, very dramatic. But as my girlfriend and I were getting in the car, my mother was standing on the porch screaming. The last thing I heard her scream was, "You're going to take away all his passion. You're horrible because you're going to take away all his passion." And when she said that, it was something that really stuck with me because I guess was the source of a lot of the tension, as she saw her as someone that would try to form me, or I don't know, into someone I was not, and maybe crush my goals. I don't know. But it was the last time I spoke with my mom, and I didn't even see her for a few years after that because I was very upset. But what she meant, I think, in whatever state this was, it meant that this person I was with could potentially take away my enthusiasm for life, my enthusiasm for work, and saw that as a very positive thing that I had this enthusiasm, but potentially taking it away is something that was very negative. One thing for you to think about as I continue with this talk today, but you need to ask yourself who around you is potentially taking away your enthusiasm, who's making it more difficult for you to be the person that you're capable of being. What situations are you in that are draining your enthusiasm? Who's taking away your goals? What's taking away your goals? And then at the same time, what's empowering you? Because the drive to succeed and the drive to be good is really important. And if anything came out of me not talking to my mom for a few years in that episode, it was just remembering what she said. It came from subconscious, I don't know, but it was very meaningful for me at the time. My girlfriend obviously was very upset. We got in her car, which was this Alfa Romeo Spider, which is weird, with our dog. She was crying so much that when we stopped at a place to try to rent a place, they wouldn't let us rent it because they thought they could tell that something was very wrong. But what did she mean by that when she said this passion? Does it mean that there's people and circumstances out there that take away our drive? Does it mean that without this drive, we have nothing? And what does it mean when you don't have this sort of drive? The drive to succeed, some people have it in sports, some people have it in the personal life, some people have it in all sorts of aspects of it. But it's really that passion and that drive is something that employers look for when you're getting jobs. It's something that is important. And there's people that will try to rein you in and not have you have that drive. And sometimes, more times than other people, you can actually psych yourself out. It turns out that my girlfriend, who did become my wife, is no longer my wife, but ended up taking away a lot of my passion and drive, but not in the way you might expect. And I'll talk about that in a minute. The number of people who want you to fail and who are lined up against you is very large. There's people out there who don't want you to succeed. If you're friends with certain types of people, they may not want you to be better than them. If you're part of certain firms where you're capable of doing more, those people may not want you to do well. The most important thing you can do really is to have that fight and passion within you. You really need it. And you can't let anything push that away. And you need resilience and you need to continually do well. When I was in my 30s, I moved to Malibu. And that honestly was probably one of the bigger mistakes that I ever made. At the time, I don't think it was. But I married my girlfriend a few years after that incident. We moved to Pasadena, which is part of Los Angeles. And soon she started working in Malibu for a lot of very wealthy people. And she idolized the lifestyle there. I made friends in Malibu, friends with people that were flying around in private planes and all this stuff. I started idolizing the people there and felt that being married to an attorney wasn't an adequate lifestyle for her. I found someone else very quickly, by the way, within probably less than a year of us getting married. So it wasn't a very long-term marriage. But after that happened, I guess I was upset, but maybe not that upset because I was young. And I set a goal to prove something to myself and that I could achieve all these things that she had looked down on me for not being able to achieve. It was very stupid because I had built up a fairly large company, a part of Los Angeles, and was fighting and building it up and doing very well. But the goal of moving in a fantasy, which I think a lot of people have, is that you go someplace where you can relax and take it easy and not have the stress around you in your life and that sort of thing, and somewhat even give up the fight. Different people have different fantasies. It used to be maybe retirement. For some people, maybe not working anymore and starting a family. Other people are maybe moving to the country. But that was the kind of fantasy I think that I had, and also that I would prove something to her because I had felt inadequate at the time because of all that. So the problem wasn't that I moved to Malibu. The problem is that I had made this decision to move to a smaller town and leave everything behind. And the man that my wife had left me for lived on a large cliff-top compound that now is probably worth $50 million plus. I decided that I needed to have something like that, and that was important. It was a bad value system that I had. But at that point in time, I had quite a few people working for me. I would say probably over 800, and then the company was much bigger than it is now. So I ended up doing the same thing. I built a life when I was in Los Angeles where I was constantly challenged, where I was pushing, where I had a lot of people, a lot of meetings, like the business was expanding and I was doing a lot of things. But at some point, because I had this in the back of my mind, I decided that I could work not being around a ton of people, in a smaller office, be alone with my thoughts, not have this pressure, and to some extent that I could fight and retreat. And I wanted to relax and be happy, give up the fight. And if you think about it and you look at the most successful people, business people, politicians, others, they don't do that. And what I did, I still continued to work, but in a different way. But giving up the fight in terms of being around people and so forth all the time and these challenges is a form of giving up the fight. So the problem is even though I moved to Malibu, I still had a lot of fight in me. So I started exercising every single day to exhaustion. So I would not have all this energy to work. I started meditating. I would take supplements and then prescription pills, which is Ambien at night, so I could fall asleep because I was so enthusiastic about work. And I got a prescription for Ambien. I tried to calm myself down and I didn't want to have all this. I was just too motivated. And I figured that why not take it easy instead of avoid a lot of these challenges? At the time I did this, the company was in 3 buildings, and there's a lot of stress when you put yourself out there and when you work hard. If you work hard as an attorney, the bigger the firm you're in and the more challenging the case is, the more stress there's going to be. The more challenging the clients, the more stress there's going to be. The larger city you're in, the larger firm, the more stress there's going to be. And so anytime you are doing something meaningful and where there's the potential to make income and there's a potential to make an impact on the world, you're going to be exposing yourself to a lot of challenges. And as this company grew to over 800 people, you can imagine the amount of issues that were going on. It's difficult to pay that many people all the time. You have all these people. People get injured in warehouses and stuff. There's lots of drama between employees and people leaving and having issues and blogging about bad experiences and good experiences. It's just not fun. It can be fun. It can be difficult. It can be anytime you expose yourself to challenges, you're going to find I have competitors trying to undermine me. I get letters from competitors all the time threatening me for reasons that made no sense to me. And then you have to keep people motivated and happy. And it can be very stressful to expose yourself to that. But that's how the world is. The world is set up, the farther you go and the more successful you become, the harder it's going to be to do things and the harder it's going to be to achieve and improve and adapt. And that's just how it works. People that succeed and do great things go through a lot of stress and they don't necessarily withdraw like I did. But for me personally, I had an attitude like many attorneys may, that I needed to do everything myself. I needed to be in charge of everything. I didn't want partners. I didn't have a lot of peers to help me. So my good coping mechanism is the background. And by the way, participating in things like this for you is a coping mechanism. There's lots of learning and knowledge is a coping mechanism, but the more that you surround yourself with people that can help you and so forth, you get peers and peer groups and so forth, the better you can do. So I stopped fighting. I decided to shrink the company and my life to some extent and escape these problems that I created for myself. And if you look at very successful people, at some point, a lot of them do that. I think Peter Thiel lives in Hawaii now, and people will escape things and may not do it, but is that in your best interest? Certainly, if you look at top politicians, some of them in the current presidential race, both of the men are in their late 70s. People that shrink from responsibility, if you don't shirk from responsibility and fighting, you keep succeeding, even into your 70s and 80s. You just have to. And I'm going to relate this to you now, because I think that most people on this call that are attorneys or coming out of law school, they have long-term goals. And a lot of times these long-term goals will involve things like going in-house, making partner in a law firm, being a judge, working in the U.S. Attorney's Office. There are other things, or even leaving the practice of law and starting a business. And these are goals, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with any of these goals, but the problem with these kind of goals is that the goal often stops there. People will think that if they reach a particular goal, they've arrived and they can relax and that they're successful. But the problem is when you feel like you can relax and you made it because of your past or current accomplishments, the world will eat you alive. That happens, all the time. I see people coming out of great law schools and believing because they graduated from some top law school that they're entitled to great jobs or they're entitled to special treatment, and the world eats them alive. And the idea that you can ever relax is just not there. The gift you have, which is what my mother said, is that it's your passion and drive. And you have to keep that alive. And you have to, the second you stop, your life and your career often stop. And one of the people I remember I worked with when I was a young associate had a goal to be a partner at a major law firm. He did become a partner in a major law firm. He was very good at his job. He worked very hard for several years, and he made partner at one of the top law firms in the country. But as soon as he made partner at a law firm, he had a deadline of a couple of years to start being productive and start generating business. And at the point he made partner, which is crazy, he started doing things like putting his effort. He got a budget of, $20,000 or $30,000 to decorate his office. So he put a lot of time into picking out the floors and a new desk and some other things. And instead of keeping his eye on the ball, he ended up losing his job. So he set a goal, but he never really set a new goal, which was even harder than the goal of making partner. The hardest thing is to get the business. It's even though maybe out of the firm he went to, for every 100 associates they hire, maybe 2 ever made partner, he didn't step up and continue to fight. And so within a few years, the firm asked him to leave. He had no idea what to do. He set a goal to go in-house, but he couldn't get any in-house jobs. And today, he's a solo practitioner. He was upset, started just not taking care of himself. His wife divorced him, and he's unhappy. And so that's what happens when you take your eye off the ball. I mean, fortunately for me, when I took the eye off the ball, I was still working 50 hours a week. I just wasn't developing myself around huge groups of people, leading in that way. But the point is that you can become a partner, but then that's just, then the goals get harder and you can never really relax. And the more successful you become and the better you become at your job, the more difficult everything becomes. You can never push forward and never relax. I see so many people, even in my own company, that believe that they're entitled to relax and take their foot off the gas at some point. And the point is that the better you get at things, the higher and higher the bar gets, and the more you're going to be challenged. I've seen people in our company start out almost not a little over minimum wage and then become people that make over 6 figures a year because they just keep challenging themselves. And that's what you need to do. A lot of people I've seen, think about all the people that have gone to the top 5 college, Stanford or Yale or something. They go to a really good school and then they assume that they've made it and that the world is going to open up to them based on a past accomplishment. All those accomplishments do, whether or not you go to a good law school, whether or not you go to a good law firm and get a job at a good law firm, all those accomplishments do is they make it possible for you to potentially go farther than you might without those accomplishments. They don't make it any easier. They actually will challenge you more. And that's something that a lot of people don't understand. I can't think of how many people that I meet within the first 5 minutes will tell me they went to some, great school or they worked at some great firm 20 years ago. What that means, hold on 1 second. Sorry about that, my camera went out. But what the good schools and so forth mean is they really don't mean anything other than you were able to go to a good school, potentially put yourself in a role where you were challenging yourself. Okay, it went on for a second. Okay, all right, so let me just move on here. When I was in law school, I thought that I had done very well by getting into a pretty good law school. I thought that was something that was really going to set me up to do well. Like many people that go to law school, little did I know, but that was something that was going to set me up for even more challenges to continually improve myself than I had before. I took classes in law school against people more competitive than I ever encountered, and a lot of these people did very well. The idea is that every step of your career is going to have a lot of challenges, and these challenges are going to force you to get better and better, and it's never really going to stop. Each new goal you reach is an invitation to compete at a much higher level, and the higher level you're competing at, or the more people you're competing with, the bigger the challenges are. It's important to really understand that you can never stop fighting, and every time you achieve one thing, you're going to be looking at having to do even more to keep rising. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't understand, is that the idea of taking your foot off the gas at any point in time in your career is just a very risky proposition. It's not something that you can ever do. And if you do it, it's going to hurt you and you're going to be held back. And some people take their foot off the gas the second they go to college. Some people take it off in high school. Other people take it off at different points. Your strength as a person and in your personal and your professional life comes from continually giving it all. And it's like that with your relationships. The harder you work on your relationships and the better person you become, the better off you'll do in your relationships. It's like that with your spirituality or your calmness as a person and your ability to process information and problems. And it's like that with your job. The better, longer you do it. And everything that you persist and continue to fight against and challenge yourself with, you're going to get better. And if you stop trying, stop fighting, and stop developing, then everything stops. You start shrinking back from what you used to be. I'll tell you one quick story that is interesting to me, is that in our placement company here, BCG, the company's continually changing and getting better. We're always investigating more jobs. We're always learning to do that. We're learning different things about how to market people. We were learning different ways to form relationships with law firms. And what happens to most people that come here is they typically will come in, and a lot of them will do very well in the beginning, extremely well. But then the company continually throws new challenges, and there's new things that continually happen to make the company better and more effective at what it's doing. And as that happens, those people will tend not to set new goals, and they'll stick with what they were doing in the past because they're comfortable, and they won't develop. And then a lot of times they won't succeed because everything changes. The whole market changes, everything changes, and they don't develop the skills. And it's like that with anything. Like, you need to keep fighting, and you need to keep developing better skills. I used to weigh too much, not maybe too much, but I would say probably, 15 pounds or 20 pounds more than maybe 25, than I weigh now. And so I wanted to lose weight. I thought as I got older, it's important. I didn't want to have heart problems and things. And so I started running every day. I'd start running like 5-6 miles a day, and it actually didn't do any good. So I just kept, thinking, what is going to work? And so all I did was I started lifting weights like 3 times a week. And all of a sudden, I guess that's one of the most important things. It worked. And I did a few other things. But the idea is that if you keep fighting something, and you keep trying to improve, and you keep doing well at these things, then you will continually improve. And so you need to, every problem that you have, if you're attacking it, you want to do better and to fight it. And it's important. And the biggest mistake that you can make as an attorney is setting a goal and believing you have it once you reach that goal. You never arrive. Think about what in the market in terms of businesses and how businesses are always changing to get better and better. Would you buy the products that Apple was selling 15 years ago? Would you buy a car that was for sale 15 or 20 years ago? Would you hire, if you're like a 10th year attorney, the attorney you were 10 years ago? So everything, you can never get anything, and you can never really get anywhere unless you're really giving it your all. And you need to keep going no matter what happens. You could never really get content. The fact that people think that is insane. One challenge, or one thing that attorneys have as a goal, and I'm sure there's lots of people on this call, is they think that if they work hard in a law firm, they can get a good job in-house. And what happens to most attorneys that go in-house, I'm not saying it's going to happen to you, but it happens to a lot of people, is in-house is even more challenging. Just like the partner that became a partner and then had to get business and didn't, once you get in-house, you're playing all sorts of political games inside of a company that you may not even be ready for. You may be asked to help the firm do things that are bordering on the illegal. I know lots of people that have been fired from in-house jobs or left them when they were asked to overstate earnings or certify things that weren't true, or to help the company break rules. So there's new CEOs, owners, investors, and others that come into the business. When a new CEO comes in, they typically bring their own legal team, and you need to confront that. So there's all sorts of challenges that present themselves, and people can succeed and do very well in in-house jobs, and there's nothing wrong with an in-house job. But the problem is that it's not something in a lot of cases where you can settle down. You can never settle down. You may actually have to start fighting, and fight in a different way than you've ever fought before, and understand rules along that line. So one of the things that I've always fantasized about, and you may be the same way too, I don't know, but I've always wanted to feel that I could put trust in my life in the hands of others who would take care of me. This may be from growing up in a weird household, I don't know, but I'd want to hire people that I could trust with my affairs and who would take care of me. So that would be people like managers, accountants, lawyers, and other people that I would hire that would protect me and have my best interests at heart. That would be assistants, family members, and friends that would look out for me, wife, everybody. So I think everybody wants to feel that people around them will take care of them and they can relax and be comfortable. And I think that's a fantasy that a lot of people have. And I think it's something that you may have. It's something that when you're interviewing with employers, that employers have, they want to feel like you're going to take care of them. It's basically like curling up in a ball, like a cat or something, and being content. That's a fantasy that a lot of people have. But the point is, and it's bad news, is you really never can rely. You may be able to rely on your spouse, but it's very difficult to relax and take it easy. If you think about politicians, they hire all these people, and then those people go out and write negative books about them, or celebrities that hire people to work for them and they do the same or betray them. Everyone is constantly being pushed down by the world. And that's the way it works. The biggest force out there is gravity. Over time, gravity will shrink you. There's disease that can hurt you. There's taxes, there's competitors, there's thieves, there's all sorts of things that can happen on a day-to-day basis that you can't necessarily control, and you can never relax. And so you can never, this fantasy of being able to relax, take it easy, and not have new goals and keep fighting all the time is just not the reality of the world. One thing I'll say is that almost every manager I've ever hired, not all of them, but the majority of them have betrayed me in some way or another. And it's not because they're bad people or it's just the way some of them were, but it's just the way it works. People will form alliances. People will have their own self-interest at their forefront. They'll have certain demands. You just can't trust people forever. And it's a two-way street. Very few companies, political organizations, or anything are consistently will have people will be happy and not betraying each other. In finances, almost every financial person I've ever hired has stolen from me. One currently is on the run. The police are looking for her. They've been looking for her for a year. That's a funny story, but she was an accountant in my office. Another one went to prison for stealing my credit cards and car. The person gave himself a big raise without telling me. Another paid his friend and the company a lot more money than they should have received. I mean, I think over $30,000. It's just lots of trouble. It's just things that have happened to me, and it's not really a big deal. I had an assistant once who created a meth lab in my house when I was out of the country and stole tens of thousands of dollars from my credit card. It's just you can't necessarily trust anyone. There's all these forces that are always working against you, and I'm no different than anyone. The farther you go, the more of this stuff is going to happen, and the harder you push, the more you're going to have to overcome things. People will steal from you. All sorts of things happen, and it's just the way the world works, and it's not certainly things you can control by setting limits with people. And I'm certainly not wallowing in self-pity about all this. I don't feel sorry for myself. What I'm realizing and what you should realize is that regardless of your fantasies, no one is ever going to take care of you. You have to take care of yourself. The world and everything is coming at you all the time. And gravity is shrinking you. If you own a house, you're going to be taxed every year. And if you don't pay your taxes, you're going to lose your house. And you can never stop fighting. And you always need to set bigger and bigger goals. And that's just how it works. Everybody in the world has their agenda, and you need to stick up for yourself. And every successful person out there, what they do with negative things that happen to them is they don't give up. They use something that's bad that happens to them. I was once talking to a very famous spin master. Well, he's a public relations firm, but he's more of a spin doctor. And people tend to react in two ways to challenges and when bad things happen to them. Some people get mad and some people get sad. And the best thing you can do really is to get mad, because if you're mad, you use that as fuel and it makes you work harder and prove something. Just like I needed to prove something to my ex-wife by buying a ridiculous compound in Malibu on a cliff. You need to really use bad things to happen to you as rocket fuel. Every time you reach a goal, you have to keep fighting. You can't ever stop fighting. You need to keep fighting. And the game's going to continue to get harder and harder the farther you go. And so many attorneys make the mistake of they stop fighting and they stop improving and they think they can relax. And I look at resumes all day long. It makes me mad. And that's why I'm talking about this. And for you, it doesn't matter where you are right now. It doesn't matter how you're doing. It doesn't matter what's happened to you. You need to take everything that's ever happened to you and use it to get better and better and to make you angry and not get sad. You need to keep going. And then this session really isn't about goal setting, but it is to the extent it's not like a program for goal setting, but almost all successful people have goals and they write them down and then they continually will look at those goals. At each new stage of your life, you should come up with goals. So if you reach one thing, then you need to do another. So I know someone that went in-house and their goal was to be CEO of the company. It was a big company. So instead of worrying about just being in-house and sitting down and doing a job, they decided they were going to learn how to network and how to learn about the business and so forth and become successful. And you're never set. You go into a good school. One of the worst things, by the way, that I've seen happen to people is going to a school like Yale Law School, because people come out of there with a sense of entitlement. A lot of times, not all of them, certainly not all of them by any stretch of the imagination, but can come out with a sense of entitlement and belief that the world should open up without them doing the work. and they may have gotten in there, but then they come out and they don't do as well as they could. Now, that's certainly not by any stretch of the imagination, everybody, or even the majority of people, but a lot of people. So it's the same thing with getting a job. You can't ever feel like you're all set. When you become a partner in a law firm, by the way, as I'm sure partners on this call can attest to, it's even harder in a lot of respects than being an associate, because you can no longer just do the work. You have to bring in work, you have to satisfy clients, you have to deal with all sorts of very difficult politics in the firm, and it becomes much more difficult to do things. So when I purchased this clifftop compound in Malibu, I was excited for myself. And this is a long time ago, 12, 13 years ago. But I figured I'd pay it off and then spend my days relaxing, reflecting, doing sort of remote work. I had an office there where people would come in, but I could only do 5 or 6 people. Happy. And up until that point, when I did that, my income had gone up every year. The companies had always been growing. Everything was going very well. And this was in 2008, so there was a financial crisis, 2007. But when I moved to Malibu, the opposite happened. My income started shrinking. My influence over my employees shrank. Company shrank, and I gradually began to lose more. And I went from someone that was in growth mode to someone that was in, mode where what would happen to your body if you stopped exercising, that type of thing. And so you just can never relax. You can never relax in anything you do, because if you take the pressure off, it's going to put you in a very bad state. And it's just not something that's smart for you to do. The other day, I spoke to a very successful attorney. He's surpassed all of his peers, and he's fairly young. He's, late 30s, early 40s, has a huge book of business. And now he's looking around him and he's seeing all of his peers, the people that are older than him, like in their 60s in this firm. He's seeing people that are younger. He's worked extremely hard, but he sees all these people around him that have reached a certain level, and he sees them that they give up. They're going back and they're thinking about what they did a long time ago, and they're living on that, and nothing is happening to them anymore. And it's with partners, it's with people that have gone in-house, it's with all these people, and they've stopped. And so here he is at the pinnacle, doing extremely well, and he's seeing this. And I thought that was so interesting and he's at a very good firm, but all around you, there's people that aren't fighting anymore and that are giving up. And certainly people like me that didn't give up, certainly didn't give up, but aren't pushing themselves to the extent they could. And I was watching a documentary not too long ago about a successful celebrity. I forget what his name was. Maybe Chris Rock, I'm not sure. But they were showing that he gets up every morning, like at 5, he goes to a personal trainer where he exercises for a couple hours because he needs to be in better shape than his peers. He goes to the office, and he goes into an office instead of his great house in Hollywood Hills, where he could probably run an entire company. And he surrounds himself with people and situations that are challenging him. He networks all day. He's driving around Los Angeles, and then he gets home late at night. And this is someone that could relax. He could take it easy, but he keeps improving. And that's the game. And that's what the smartest people and the most successful people realize, is that you can never relax. And one of the things is that most law firms, especially those that don't have the highest purpose partner, have a lot of dead weight. When you look around you, this is really what's going on in most law firms. There's people that are trying to hold on to their job and take as much money as they can without contributing. And then there's people that are trying to contribute. And there's people that don't want to be challenged. And there's people that are constantly challenging themselves. And there's people that aren't giving it a lot of value and expect to be paid and kept around based on their past accomplishments. And there's people that aren't. And this is really what the world's about. The world is about people that are either contributing and setting higher goals, and people that law firms and society and everything is trying to get rid of. And that fight that you have within you to constantly achieve more is really the most important thing that you have. And I had an interesting conversation with a very successful partner at a major firm in the Midwest the other day, and it was interesting. So he had been a partner and a young partner at a major firm, and it's not the one I was talking about earlier. And he had a big book of business. He was in a big Midwestern city. I guess it doesn't really matter which one it was, but for the city he was in, he was probably one of the top partners in the firm. He wanted to take a personal leave for a year to go help a friend with his program this friend was working on. or someone that he knew that he had the ability to do. And the firm initially agreed to let him go, and everything was oral. The thing is that he was young, and he didn't like the fact that he had this giant book of business, and there were all these kind of older partners that weren't working and so forth in the firm, and were really just making a lot of income off his business without billing a lot of hours and so forth. So there were people there that were contributing and setting new goals. This partner was someone that was doing that, and there were people that weren't doing that. And so he tried to come back after his 1-year leave of absence, which was a mistake. He took his eye off the ball, and they wouldn't let him come back. And they wanted to keep his clients. But the big thing is they didn't like the fact that he was motivating and getting all the younger partners up against the firm in terms of clients and so forth, taking their clients. They didn't like the fact that he was challenging them for being dead weight. And so there's all sorts of people around you that are going to be dead. There's dead weight in every law firm. There's dead weight in every company. But those are the people that don't succeed and have problems. And anyway, he actually is in the process of suing this firm and trying to get his job back. Probably not a good idea to sue a major law firm in a major city, but that's kind of what's going on with that. And he wanted to take time off, and the partners there wanted to keep his business. I hope this has been helpful. I'm going to answer a lot of questions today as well. Any questions you guys have, and I hope you guys have a lot of questions. The big thing is that everywhere you go, you're going to find people that want to relax and stop fighting. And you may do the same thing. And those are the people that when you're in power and when you're in control, or if you're in control, that you will want to push out. And you can never stop fighting. The fight that you have, like my mother said, this crazy episode, which maybe happened so I would remember it, maybe so I could tell it to you, is all you have. Your passion is one of the most important things, and it's what makes everything in your career happen. And every time you do something well and you advance, whether it's getting into a good firm or it's getting a new job, it's an opportunity to try harder and to get better and become a better person. One thing that I teach, this, if you're ever looking for a job or you're looking for a job right now, one of the most important lessons that you can learn about looking for a job and job search is you may ask yourself, what type of person do most employers want to hire? And the type of person most employers want to hire is someone that's trying to improve. So it's actually, if you're moving from a small firm to a bigger firm, law firms or a medium-sized firm to a big firm, you're in a lot of cases, you may not believe this, but what happens in a lot of cases is, law firms want to hire, I don't know, I'm getting laryngitis here. I've been talking since 7 this morning. But law firms want to hire people that are hungry and that want to improve and that have that energy in them. And that's more important to them in a lot of cases than you just moving over from one large firm to another large firm is not necessarily the most attractive. What's attractive is someone that's moved up. And so you may have started a smaller firm, gone to a medium firm, and then a bigger firm, because that passion and so forth is really the most important thing that you have. Your ability to be passionate and to really give everything that you have is what is important. And one thing that happens to a lot of attorneys as they get older, a lot of times they'll start in a large law firm and they'll become jaded and they'll lose their passion. So you may, have heard, I'm sure you have, that associates with 2 to 5 years of experience are the most attractive to law firms. And then after that, the people that have business are the most attractive. And the reason that people that are less senior are attractive is because they typically will have this passion and enthusiasm for the work, for getting ahead. And a lot of times people that get older may conclude that they don't have the passion and won't have it. So that passion, if you can communicate that, even if you're older, is really the most important thing. Law firms want to hire people, and most employers want to hire people that are trying to move up. Like anytime you're trying to improve rather than shrink back. And if you just think about it, like the idea of moving up means that you're trying to improve yourself because you're hungry and you want to get ahead. And they like that because they can challenge that and they can put that into hours. That means you're going to learn more, you're going to play the game. And they don't like it when you're retreating. If you're retreating and trying to move to smaller firms, it's okay. But you may, if you're trying to get different type of experience and get trials and so forth, everything needs to look like you're growing personally. And almost all the placements that I make as a recruiter are by being able to position people as someone who's trying to improve. And if you can do that, you can literally start out, if you keep your fight in you, it doesn't matter where you went to law school, none of this stuff matters. What matters is where you end up. And you can certainly end up at really good firms. Many people want to feel successful. You'll go to a good college or law school and your ego will say, I've done it, I'm successful, I did this achievement, and you'll stop. Or you'll get a job and you'll say, I'm successful now, and you'll stop. This is just not how the world works. You have to continually keep trying. You have to continually keep fighting, and you can never stop. And the second you stop, the world will eat you alive. In terms of my house in Malibu, it got to be too expensive for me, and I had to get rid of it and move. And that's the kind of thing that happens to people that don't keep fighting. Or like my friend that became a partner and now he's a solo practitioner fighting to try to get work and divorced, and went from being a partner in a major firm where his kids were very proud of him and they were all going to private school, to now not being able to even afford to send his kids to college. This is serious stuff. You cannot let the world take advantage of you, and you cannot get rid of your fight. And it's really all you have. There's nothing more important than that fight. So I'm going to take a quick break for a couple minutes. And then when I come back, please ask as many questions as you can. I've got all the time in the world. I'm going to answer every question you guys have today. Some people have chatted questions too. Just try to do it in the Q&A. I will be back in about 2 minutes. Thanks. Okay, so I'm going to go to questions. Let's see here real quickly. Give me one quick question. Let me just see here. Okay, we got that. Okay, so let's see here. Questions. Okay. Will this presentation be available for later review? Yes. All the presentations after they've happened go up on or.com, and so you can always see those. And then if you are on the webinar, I do think we are going to be sending out for people that signed up a replay of it if you do want to watch it. So yes, that's what will happen. Okay, the next question is, any suggestions, and just ask as many questions as you have, because I'm answering all these live and they're anonymous, so there's no need to worry that you'll show up or anything like that, or I'll say your name. Any suggestions for an attorney who wants to transition from government practice to private practice? That question depends on what type of work you're doing. In private practice, in government, it really depends. I don't know what type of work you're doing, but if you're doing litigation, you can easily transition back into a private practice job. It's typically difficult to transition from, unless you're in the U.S. Attorney's Office, to large firms, but litigation you can transition back into. It really depends on your practice area, so I don't know what that is, but the more focused your practice area is, the better, the easier it is. And typically law firms do prefer people that are coming directly from law firms when you're transitioning in. If you're coming directly from a law firm, it is going to be easier typically for you to get back into work to another law firm, or if you have law firm experience. So sometimes you may need to start out in a smaller firm. The benefit of starting out in a smaller firm, though, is once you learn the ropes and you start bringing in business and that sort of thing, it really is not that difficult to transition back to move up to different size firms later on. Government attorneys can always transition into private practice, and it's not that difficult. But it also depends on your seniority. So you may need to work at a smaller firm, or depending on your seniority level. Okay, let's see here. The next question is, I am a staff attorney and my firm rarely promotes staff attorneys to associates. I'm always trying to challenge myself to do more work and take on more responsibility, but they have not acknowledged it, nor have they discussed any opportunities for growth. I think the best move is to lateral to another firm as an associate. What do you think? There's a couple different points. If you work really hard and you do really good work, there is a possibility that you may be able to transition to being like a regular associate in your firm. One thing that happens a lot of times with attorneys that are trying to transition is the law firms have these rules where certain types of people, like maybe a contract attorney or staff attorney, cannot be made associates. And they may just have certain rules for that. Like some firms take the majority of the people out of their summer program, and other law firms just don't want to open that door. I believe that if you really believe that's a hard and fast rule, you should look around and you should try to find out and get information of whether or not the firm has ever promoted staff attorneys. And if they have promoted staff attorneys, then that means you have a chance. The other thing I would recommend as a staff attorney is, if you can, try to find a powerful partner to work with, meaning someone that has a lot of business, and try to get most of your work for them, because they are the ones that have the power to make you like an attorney, like a full-time attorney. So those are the people that I would try to get close to. Partners with business, law firms typically listen to. So those are the same kind of people that can make you partner if you're later made an associate. So I would try to do whatever you can to work with the most powerful partners. I would get information about whether or not they promote staff attorneys and go from there. But the other thing too is on your resume, how do you distinguish between being a staff attorney and an attorney? I would just put attorney a lot of times. You don't need to necessarily put a staff attorney, or you can just put the name of the firm and not your title sometimes on your resume and the work you're doing. You typically do not want to draw a lot of attention to it because it may look like you couldn't get a regular job or something like that, which is not a big deal. There's reasons for people to be staff attorneys. They may want more flexibility in their hours. They may be raising children. There's all sorts of reasons, but I would do that. And I think this is a very good question, by the way. If there aren't opportunities for growth, though, as a staff attorney, then what I would recommend doing is doing whatever you can to try to find a regular job. There's some very bad staff attorney jobs out there. I mean, there's jobs where you may be working for 1/3 to 1/4 of what you'd be paid in a law firm as an associate and not working hours that are much different. I would the best thing you can do is try to get a job in your own firm, but if you can't, then transition. And I see this question all the time. There's lots of people that have this issue that you're talking about and frankly are qualified to move, but you have to look at it from the law firm's point of view. As a staff attorney, they want to provide lower billing rates to their clients, and then they also want to pay you less. And you have to look at who's got the incentive to make you an associate, and it is difficult. And they always will have document review and other types of work that you can do that they want staff attorneys to do and they need them for. But thank you for that question. That's a great question. Okay, let's see. It says, apply this to micro level, such as vacations. My first 15 years as a lawyer litigator, I never took a vacation. Finally was forced to take a vacation by my spouse and firm that felt it set me back with work. Had to work twice as hard leading up to vacation and 3 times as hard upon return. Never got caught up risking burnout. Wow, comment. Okay, I've certainly heard of people not taking vacations for a long time. And I'll tell you one quick story is I went on vacation once when I was practicing at my firm. I had I don't know what they're called, a mentor, like an older partner attorney that was supposed to be my mentor. And the day I was going on vacation, he called me at home and said that he and everyone were wishing me a nice vacation. And I thought that was funny. And it was almost like a comment that you shouldn't take a vacation because certainly he hadn't taken a vacation. So that's one thing I don't like about the practice of law in a lot of law firms is people not being able to take vacations. I think a vacation is extremely important. I don't know why it could have set you back so long, but I just don't think it's healthy for you to work 15 years without a vacation. I think you need to get perspective and get out of what you're doing. I know this is about setting goals, this thing, but I think 15 years is way too long without taking a vacation. I think that if you can, you really need to take vacations. I just don't think that's a good idea. I think you may want to think about maybe that. Why are you working so hard? It would be a question. And do you need to work so hard at your firm? Because I don't know that 15 years without taking a vacation or kind of enjoying things with your spouse is worth it. I think that you need to figure out ways to have other people that you can trust with your work and your clients. That would be my advice. But I certainly admire that work ethic. It's amazing. But okay, let's see. How would you explain to the partner you work for that you plan to accept an internal offer at another firm? Large law firm, 140 attorneys in California. I don't know what an internal offer means. Another office of the same firm. I don't know how you would explain that. If you're typically, anytime you're leaving to go to another firm or work at another office in your firm, you want to be as gracious as possible to the person that you worked for. And if you want to leave the door open for coming back, something that I remember when I worked at a law firm called Quinn Emanuel when I was young, and there was a partner there named, the founder, John Quinn, who's a fairly famous attorney. He said that the thing he regretted the most in his career was not being nicer to people on the way up or more gracious. And I think that the better you are to people when you're leaving, the nicer you are, the better. And then the biggest mistakes I ever made in my legal career was I left a firm, and when they asked me why I was leaving, there was a partner that I kind of didn't like, and I told him I was leaving for more prestige and more money. and it was significantly more money. And that was not a nice thing to say. And then at one point I wanted to come back to the firm, and they actually said I could come back. And then this partner told a bunch of people what I'd said. It upset everyone. It's just not a good idea to burn bridges. And so that's my advice about how to talk to people if you're leaving and that sort of thing, is to be as nice as you possibly can. Okay, let's see. My best conclusion to fire off. My question is that I've been an attorney who achieves, similar to your example, much more than their peers. My problem is that hiring companies feel that I'm too young for assistants associated with the company for so long, plus they're all age 50. Let me see here. Okay, I'm not sure what that question means. So if you could retype it, I'll answer it right now. But I don't know. I'm assuming that you're saying you're too young, maybe, that they think you're too young and don't have enough experience. Certainly, there are companies that will think that way. And I see what you're saying. The people that are associated with a company are all 50 plus, that are older. Some firms will value young people having experience and others won't. And same thing with companies. So I would worry more about try to find companies that value your younger experience. But if you retype the question, I will answer it. And there's a lot of questions today, which is great. And just keep asking, and I'll answer questions for you guys as long as you want. Let's see here. Okay, and try to answer them not in the chat function, but in the Q&A function. But I will go to the chat function in a little bit too, because people have been asking in the chat. Okay, let's see. For an unemployed in-house downsized attorney in the early 60s, how do you overcome ageism and the assumption that you only want to go out into retirement? That's a good question. There is a lot of bias towards younger attorneys in the legal profession and hungry people. The person that just asked the question was funny. They said that they were too young and too successful. And you're asking saying you're too old, and the idea that you want to go out into retirement. There's nothing wrong with going into a position where you can go out into retirement. My father, after he retired, actually had a series of jobs where he would advise companies on different things all over the world. And there are people that have a need for your experience. I don't know what type of work that you do, if you're a litigator or a corporate attorney, but the best thing that you could do possibly is to try to get a job with in my opinion, the best ones are young, growing companies. And the reason for that is that they can definitely use your experience. You will understand problems and issues at a different level than a lot of younger attorneys, and you will have a very good perspective that people don't have. And that can be very helpful. Trying to find smaller companies. And a lot of times those jobs are going to be something that you're going to need to network into more so than just applying online, because there is a bias towards younger people. So if you can network in the community and so forth and find people that way, it's going to be much easier for you as someone that's in their early 60s looking for a job. And early 60s, by the way, is not that old. I mean, that people, as you can see in the presidential race, people keep going until they're 80s. And I know attorneys. I know one guy that was practicing when he was in his mid 90s, and except for a hearing problem, was every bit as sharp as anybody else. Are you still providing resumes and feedback? So yes, if you're a member of OR. After this call, you can just contact us through there, and I'd be happy to review your resume and provide feedback, even talk to you on the phone real briefly about your resume. Your resume is very important. There's lots of information on BCG about resumes. There's also a presentation on OR about resumes that I recommend watching. But your resume is very important. One thing I just wanted to say to everybody about resumes today that I would hope that you would listen to that's important is one of the worst things you can do on your resume is to politicize it. The country is so divided between Democrats and Republicans and all this sort of things. There's just a lot of people, especially younger people, put a lot of that stuff on their resume. It hurts you because you 50-50 chance that someone's not going to like it. And I honestly don't care either way. I used to think that stuff was great and put all sorts of stuff on my resume when I was younger, but I don't think it did me much good. That probably did me a lot more harm than it could. So that's one of the things that I see a lot in resumes. And then one other comment, I'm not going to talk about resumes. A lot of people put their grade point average and stuff on there. Unless it's awesome, when you receive some honors, just take it off there. You don't need a lot of information. But we do have a really good presentation about resumes on OR. And then if you are a member of OR, which is OAR.com, just send me your resume. Most of the people I've just been calling on the phone and talking about the resumes. I'm happy to talk about your resume. I love it. Okay, so let's see. What should one do when their personal health is a distraction from their job? So there is nothing wrong with having health problems. Certainly lots of people have health problems. I've heard of a lot of people in New York coming down with various things. I don't know if it's caused from working in office buildings all the time. But if your health is a personal distraction from your job, then The best thing you can do a lot of times is you can talk to the firm about it and you can go on a reduced hour arrangement. There's nothing wrong with that. I think taking 15 years without a vacation could cause health problems, but you do need to take care of your health. And I think I talked a little bit today about things like spirituality and exercise. Keeping your mind clear, I think, is one of the most important things you can do. And your health is very important. And if you have health problems, I recommend talking to your firm and perhaps even trying to find a job where they can help you with that. Or the other option, of course, is taking time off for your health problems. There is something, not condescending because you may not know this, but there's something called the Family Medical Leave Act, which if you work for a certain size firm, they have to leave your job open if you leave and to take care of your health problems. And there's all sorts of health problems people have, regardless of what it is. You are entitled to get sick and come back strong. Okay. I have 20 years of in-house counsel experience, but I find that in my job search that a variety of companies require a top law school candidate. Is it possible that such companies would eclipse experience over a top law school? Yes, it is possible. I do not think that the law school you went to for any attorney is the most important thing. The only thing a law school shows is that you did well in the LSAT and had good grades in college, wanted to spend a lot of money at a good law school. And those are certainly important things, but really the most important thing, more important than law school, is your experience. And so that's especially true the longer out you get. I think that in terms of your in-house experience, the most important thing you can do when it comes down to resumes is to present yourself as someone who has a certain type of experience or looks very good on paper for the type of person that the law firm is interested in. So the better you can do that, or not the law firm, but the company is searching for. So if the company is searching for a certain type of person, then it's always a good idea to position yourself as that sort of person to the extent that you can. Okay, let's see here. The next question. Give me 1 second. Just want to see if I can do something here. Okay, the next question is, and ask as many questions as you want. There are lots of questions today, which is great, so thank you. Hi, Harrison. How do I get past second interview? I frequently get dinged at this stage, even though I have top credentials. I'm friendly and prep for interviews, but often don't get past the stage in the interview process. Okay, so that's a great question. There are 3 things that everyone should understand that employers are looking for when they're trying to hire people. I almost feel like I should open a separate sheet for this. Let me just see here which one I'm sharing. But let me see if I can help you with something here. Give me 1 second. I'm going to open a separate document. Let me see here, new window. And I'm sharing the screen so that maybe I can answer these questions a little bit better. 3 things employers, I hope you can see this, 3 things. So 3 things employers are looking for when they're trying to hire someone. They're asking, 3 things employers are asking is probably the better way. And this is something that you should remember going into interviews, that you should remember when you're talking to firms. You should remember really anytime, let me just make sure I got the right thing open here. I'm sharing, is this the right thing? Okay. Document, I'm sorry. Okay, so the 3 things employers are asking when they're trying to hire you. The first thing they're asking, can you do the job? They're asking, can you be managed? And then the next thing they're asking is, will you do the job long? Those are the 3 questions that everybody's asking. And I've been around the block with this many times. I've always thought about different approaches to this, but this is the 3 things that I believe that are the most important. So can you do the job just comes down to your education, experience, maybe where you've worked, and all those sorts of things. And so your resume pretty much takes care of that. And that's really the main thing. So most people, once you've gotten the door in the employer is going to know, they're going to have an idea of, whether or not you can do the job. So you're not I want you to understand that when you go into an interview, employers typically, they've already know your experience. They're not hiring you because you say, oh, I haven't done this type of transaction, or they know you can learn anything. So it's not, they know from your resume really what kind of attorney you are right away and your experience if you put together a decent resume. So you've got in based on your resume already. So a lot of people will make the mistake when they go into interviews of thinking that they need to talk about all these different things. They think they need to talk about their education, their experience, and things they've worked on, all this stuff. But if you're working, pretty much they already know that. It's on your resume. They don't really need a lot of information about it. And the more they're asking about that, a lot of times the worst. You may be dealing with an uptight human resources person or attorney that's asking about it, but for the most part, they don't care. One of the big questions that they're asking is, can you be managed? And management is very important. Like the reason management is important is because the law firms and employers want people that will follow directions. They want people that will not undermine the employer. They'll want people that prioritize the employer over themselves. They'll want people that look like team players and all these sorts of things. And people basically that will sit down and do work. So if you look at the typical law firm, and I'm not trying to be rude here, you do have a lot of times people that are just very nerdy, that they get hired more so than people that may have lots of enthusiasm and stuff. So anything that you say, when you start talking about your needs in interviews, or you start talking about things that show too much independence, like one example would be people that have had their own businesses in the past. Law firms don't like that because it shows too much independence and lack of management. Anything that shows your ability to get along with other people. So law firms love people that have done things like, and I hate to say this, have been in fraternities, have their sororities, and are willing to listen to people, that show respect, that don't think that they're smarter than others, that are willing to listen. All these sorts of things are important. And I would say that it's also important to understand that this management is for partners too. Partners inside of law firms, believe it or not, are often some of the most manageable people. They will sit in committees and everything, but they can be managed. They'll do what they're told, and they'll follow, and they'll respect the firm, and that's how they get ahead. And in order to run any type of organization, like, you need to be able to be managed. That's very important to be in an organization. So think about all the things that you may have done in your second round interviews. The first round interview is typically you go in there and you're screened, and the firm's just seeing if they like you and if you look okay and professional enough, and you'll get a second interview. But in the second interview, they're asking whether or not you can be managed. That's one of the questions they're asking. So your education and stuff is not something really that's that important. You can brag about it all you want, but it's not going to be that important. You can ask questions that show an interest in what they're doing, and you can show that you can get along with people, show that you have ability to understand the material and so forth, or understand things instinctively, and perk up and look like you're enthusiastic. And I can tell people when I train people, for example, that are enthusiastic or interview people and aren't, but you can pick up and look enthusiastic. That's important. But they're asking that. And the final question they're asking is, will you do the job long term? And this is actually one of the more important ones too. So too many people out in the world are floundering, and they're not committing to anything. They don't commit, and because they don't commit, nothing ever happens. They're always looking for a job. They may want to go in-house when they're in a law firm. They may want to go in-house. They may have switched firms for the wrong reasons before, for inconsequential reasons. And so these are the questions that everybody's asking when they're trying to hire you. People want to hire people that are going to commit and put their heads down. One example that I was doing a training session today or yesterday, and I gave an example, is in 2000, I hired someone, and that person had been at their previous firm for 17 years. They ended up staying here for exactly 17 years. In 2000, I also hired someone who had, hired someone who'd been at the previous firm for 8 years. That person stayed 9 years. Almost every person I hired that's had 1 year of experience has stayed 1 year, And so you can tell from resumes how long people are going to stay. 2 years, same thing, 2 years, 2 years. And think about yourself and how long you last in places. And that's not always the case. Sometimes I have one person working here now that had never been in a job more than a year and a half and has been here 8 years because she's having a very good experience. But at the same time, employers are asking this. So they're going to hire people that look like they're going to commit, that are not always looking for a job. And this is extremely important in terms of the dynamic that you're coming up against when you're applying for jobs, is they're always asking these questions. And the most important is showing you can be managed. The problem with having stuff to do with anything that shows too much independence or group memberships in groups that that they may not like, or too much. If they can't manage it, they want to be able to give you directions. And in every company, there's people that can't be managed and the firms are pushing out. The problem with not trying to do the job long term is if you're not committing, you're not going to take the work seriously, and you're always going to be looking for something else. And law firms don't want to see that. So I hope that answers the question. It's a long answer, but it's important. And understanding these three things is really something that's going to make a huge difference in your career and make you do much better. Okay, let's see. Okay, answer live. I have a question about last week's topic, avoiding drama. What to do if the drama is coming from your boss, constantly yelling at you and using you as a punching bag. So in that situation, you have a couple of different options. One of the things that I would recommend is if that is happening, the first thing you want to do is look at your performance. And I'm not saying that, I'm going to actually correct that in a second, but is there a reason that this is happening? The odds are probably not. It's probably not related to your performance. It may be related to something else, meaning they can't manage their anger. So if it's that unpleasant and that abusive, you have a couple of different options. One thing that I've seen people do in firms, and it actually works, is you can just go to someone on the management committee or a more powerful partner and say, this is very difficult to deal with. What do I do? And in most cases, they may give you another person to work with. The other option is leaving the firm, but you're much better off trying to stay at the existing firm if you can in order to get over the problem. That's really because every time you switch jobs, it's an indication that you may have been doing something wrong, or there may be some issues in your previous job. And not always, and certainly not if you're moving up as well. But if you're dealing with those issues and you don't feel like they're resolvable, then you can do that. You can also talk to the person, but at the same time, that may be not advisable. Being yelled at in a very unpleasant position is not a good thing. It happens in all law firms and organizations, but it's certainly not a good thing. Okay, let's see. Should goals be worked on the basis of tiers, or be short-term, medium-term, or long-term? What are your suggestions on networking, and how is it possible to have a session on networking? So yes, I will have a session on networking. I'm happy to do that, and also goals. Goals, though, is a session on networking goals. And I may have done a session on networking but I will check. Separate one on goals. Yeah, but in terms of goals, you typically want to set goals every quarter. You do what are called OKRs. I can send everyone that's on this call an article about them if you email me, but OKRs are a good way. That's what we do in this organization. I will typically have action items for each week, and then I'll go back and I'll review. I'll have action items for each month and then each quarter. It's important to have goals because they continually will help you improve, and they're very useful. Okay, let's see here. Okay. I hope that helps. Yeah, so I will have a session on networking. If I haven't, and if you want to email me, I can probably give you access to that as well. Okay, let's see here. To your earlier statement, why do firms not promote staff attorneys? Always wanted to know. Okay, so the reason that law firms typically will not promote staff attorneys is because there's a couple different reasons. In general, but like I said earlier, law firms need staff attorneys, so they need people to do certain types of work. So they may have document review that they don't want to give their normal attorneys to do, or they'll quit. The billing rates are too high. They may want them to do different types of work, and they typically will have lower qualifications for hiring staff attorneys. And there often is a perception, and it's not necessarily accurate, but there often is a perception that people become staff attorneys because of the fact that they don't want to challenge themselves as much and that sort of thing, and may not have the drive. So those are the main reasons. And I will say that I've seen a lot of very good people be staff attorneys. I'll tell you just two quick stories. Recently, I saw a girl that was a very talented attorney, but she was at a small firm and she wanted to work at a large law firm. And she was a trademark attorney in the trademark practice group. They only had staff attorneys because I think the billing rates are lower for staff attorneys, and a lot of the work is piecemeal work. So she got hired as a staff attorney there. And she was very happy to get the job because she wanted to work in a very prestigious firm. Happy to be a staff attorney as opposed to an associate in a smaller firm. And then I've also seen a lot of people just get staff attorney jobs that may have gone in-house or done something, and then the only job they would get offered was a staff attorney because law firms were nervous that after going in-house they might leave. So there's different reasons for law firms to